Welcome to the Galleria. Well, it's not the Galleria anymore. Now, this is Valor Preparatory Academy, 1983. This was the 49th Street Galleria, and if you were a kid on the west side of Salt Lake City, this was the place to be. 1983 to 1990 was the 49th Street Galleria. The Utah Fun Dome was around until about 2004. Kind of went downhill. They tried to make some changes, but eventually, bankruptcy, they were out of business. The building sat empty for a really long time. There was a convention center here. It was like a pet refuge for like a week and a half. And then another school bought it. I love that the building is still here, and I love that that they're still using a lot of the old Galleria stuff. The Galleria started in 1983. It was actually a mirror image of another 49th Street Galleria that was in Philadelphia, which also the 49th Street Galleria. This location was picked because of the address that the franchise could have. So the Galleria was in business until about 1994, 1995. There's some debate on when it changed names to the Utah Fun Dome. While it was very fun, not exactly a dome. We were all very confused. The 90s were a confusing time, man. We were all wearing like silly hats and listening to Beastie Boys. That's when they added things like bungee jumping, roller coasters, laser tag. There were some wicked additions to the Fun Dome in the 1990s. You go in back here, which is the kitchen, but it still had the archway. You'd pay $5 and you'd go in there and you would sing over the top of like Prince songs or like Milli Vanilli. And then they'd give you a cassette tape of you singing. So the older kids, my sister, would do this. They would sing songs and give them to their boyfriends. So we have climbed up to what was the DJ booth when it was the 49th Street Galleria. This is the kind of stuff that I love doing with cool stuff, is when you can kind of find some of the old remnants of what was here before. I remember this carpet. This was 49th Street Galleria carpet. And so if you look down here, look, you can see the DJ lights are still here, where we would control the DJ lights for dancing. And all of the audio cords are still down here, the old 1/4-inch cables, the old XLRs that would go to all the speakers throughout the building. If you go back and watch the video to Tiffany's I Think We're Alone Now, you'll see that it was actually filmed on this stage in the Galleria. This would have been Casey Jr.'s batting cage, which is now the school's cafeteria. Some of it's still the same, like the flagstone walkway and the old lampposts. And so you'd come down, you'd get your helmet and your bat. And then in the 1990s, batting cages were out of favor for some reason. I guess nobody did batting. So they turned this into like a go-kart track. And they figured out like the next day that the whole room filled up with like exhaust from the lawnmower engines and burnt rubber. And so they had to open up all the back doors, but I think that only lasted a few months. So in the 1980s, 90s, and even into the early 2000s, this would have been the bowling alley. Bowling Green, as it was called in the early days. 30 lanes of bowling. Later they added Cosmic Bowling, and they had wicked cheese fries back there. I remember that, and they were just $1. A church moved in here, K2, held their services in here. This auditorium seats 800 people. So check it out, man. They get chandeliers in their school. If this were my school growing up, you'd have underpants hanging from that thing in the first day. In fact, give me a few minutes, see what we can do. Back in the day, this would have been the arcade, the pit, as they called it. You know, you had lines and lines of video games, everything from, video games in 1983 to 2004 when it was all redemption games. The wall was all pinball machines. So we are inside Valor Prep. Is that what we can call it?
Prep,
Valor
Valor
Prep
Academy.
Valor Prep, which was, of course, at one point the 49th Street Galleria. The clock behind us here, the iconic clock, that was like the meeting spot, right?
Right.
Because we didn't have phones or anything. So it was like, okay, I'm gonna go play mini golf, and then I'm gonna meet you at the clock, and then we'll decide what we're gonna do next.
6 hours later.
Yeah, 6 hours later. How do you turn an amusement park, essentially, into a high-end school?
Well, we got really fortunate that there was actually one school here before there was us. And so we're actually retrofitting it from one school to another. So they did a lot of the heavy lifting for us, thank goodness. They're the ones that got rid of the laser tag and the bowling alley and the roller coasters and the batting cages. Boo! So blame them, don't blame us. But new coats of paint, just making it more 21st century. but we left a lot of the good bones and a lot of the old history in place.
I can't imagine going to school somewhere that has like crystal chandeliers and like grand stairways.
Right. Well, it's really fitting though, because if we're trying to establish a private school in Utah for the first time, it should look different. We've been touring families all week, and sometimes a mom will walk in here and almost have tears in her eyes because it brings her back to her childhood.
Because she remembers when it was
She was here.
That's awesome. Again, you hear me say this a lot on Cool Stuff. This is something that I have always wanted to do since I was 8 years old. Get on the roof of the old Galleria. I am literally on the roof of the 49th Street Galleria. So by the mid-2000s, things at the Utah Fun Dome were not looking great. With the rise of other fun places in the state, the old property was getting a little bit older. In 2004, there was a gang shooting in the parking lot. Kind of sealed the fate of the Utah Fun Dome. It closed shortly after, and the building was empty for a really long time. The 49th Street Galleria, or as it is now known, Valor Preparatory Academy. My thanks to Valor Prep for walking us through today. My thanks to Evan, the headmaster, for taking time and hanging out with us today. It's really cool to see how much of the Galleria is left, how much of my childhood is still in this building. So as always, like it, subscribe to it, comment below, let us know what you want to see next time on Cool Stuff in Utah. I'm gonna go play skee ball.